Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Today's video features a good friend of mine, Mortis Media. We've collaborated several times and he is one of my top narrators. So at the end of the video, be sure to subscribe to Mortis Media's channel. He's doing wonderful things for this community. Sit back, relax, join Mortis and me, stay sinful. Story number 1. Bear in mind this was late 2009 and I was only 10 at the time. Me, my mother, and stepdad lived in a small town in Sweden in a large house. If you were upstairs, you could still hear talking down at the kitchen, so it wasn't that isolated. I was 10 years old when this story took place. One evening I was home alone watching cartoons. If I remember correctly, I was watching SpongeBob in our living room and eating ice cream. 5 minutes into eating my delicious ice cream, I was sure I heard a silent knock on the door. I didn't think much of it and continued watching the show. Another 5 minutes passed and I heard the knocking again, but this time it was much louder. I was frozen in fear, waited for the knocking to stop. After 30 seconds, the knocking stopped and the only sound was the television. I called my mom and she said they'd be home in 20 minutes. She told me to go into my room and lock my door. I went into my room without turning the TV sound off, so it was very loud. I sat in my room and after 2 minutes I heard somebody knocking once more. This time they were banging loudly on the door. I was frozen in fear once again. After 3 minutes I could hear the door lock turn and somebody walking in. The person was inside my house while I was home alone. I sat there in my room quiet and then turned the TV off. The footsteps were louder and it felt like it was coming towards my room. After a couple of seconds, the steps stopped, and I could hear knocking on my bedroom door, and an old man say, "Let me in. I have something for you." I started screaming and crying for my mother. The man started shaking the door handle. After 2 minutes, I heard a car outside. I looked out the window. My mom was home. I opened the window and screamed for help and said that there was a man in the house. My stepdad quickly ran to the shed to get his axe and ran up the stairs. The man quickly ran out the back door. My stepdad ran after him into the streets. My mom called the police and my stepdad calmed me down when he got in. This is an experience I will never forget. Story number 2. This happened well over 10 years ago, so I will do my best to describe the events accurately. One of my childhood homes had a balcony that was attached to both my mother's bedroom and mine via double glass doors in each of our rooms. Next to the balcony are 2 trees, one I often used to climb up and down from the balcony. This balcony faced out to the street. One night when I was 13, my brother and mother weren't home. I was reading in bed with a very dim reading light on. I heard what sounded like something moving in one of the trees outside, but this didn't worry me as possums and bats are common in our area. Now, I had thin curtains on the glass doors that separated my room and the balcony. As mentioned previously, the door faced out towards the street, where street lamp light was always visible through my curtains. Shortly after hearing the tree rustling noises, I see a shadow slowly move past the doors, at which point I immediately turn off my light and freeze like a deer in the headlights. The shadow was tall, so it wasn't one of the neighbor kids that I'm friends with, and it wasn't my 5-foot-tall mother. The person moved slowly, creeping as though they were trying not to be noticed. They wouldn't likely be able to see into my room, but I could see them thanks to the streetlights behind them, creating a dark silhouette. They moved past my doors out of sight. I sat there unable to move or think about what to do, other than being absolutely still. That is until I heard another sound, the sound of someone trying to open a glass door, my mom's doors to the balcony. I didn't know if she had locked them or not, but I wasn't taking chances. I moved as quickly and as silently as I could to my bedroom door and locked it. I listened for what the person was doing now. They were still jiggling the glass door handle, but it sounded like the doors weren't opening. I felt relief. This person couldn't get in surely. All I had to do was wait for them to realize that, and they would leave, right? Well, I heard light footsteps move back along the balcony to the set of my glass doors, till I saw his shadow stop directly in front of them. Again, I froze. He couldn't see me. He couldn't know I can see him. I saw a shadow of a hand reach up to my door handle, and my heart stopped. Had I actually locked those doors myself today? I was out there earlier. What if I forgot? The seconds leading up to him grabbing the handle felt like an eternity, but thankfully when this person tried to open the door, it did not open. It was locked. I sighed such a sigh of relief I was worried he had heard it. After this, he began pacing the length of the balcony. I didn't have a mobile phone as my mom thought me too young to have one yet, and the landline was at the other end of the house. I was too scared to take my eyes off of this person, even to call for help. I was silently crying, tears falling down my cheeks as I internally prayed they would just leave. Then I heard him stop moving. He then said, "I could just break the glass, you know." Before I could even process this, I saw car headlights turn around the corner of my street and then stop at our property gate. My mom was home. The person on the balcony moved out of sight, and I heard a loud thump as they jumped off of it. When my mom came inside, I was hysterical and was barely coherent, telling her what had just happened. Eventually, I got the message across and she called the police. They never found or caught anyone, but a neighbor reported a truck in the street that matched the description of a truck that had been reported recently for attempted child abductions near my school. Since I walked the short distance daily, the police suspected that he had followed me or seen that I lived there and waited for me to be alone.
Last December, the engine in my POS car started knocking and eventually gave out, as well as the transmission. Seeing as it would be more expensive to fix it than it would be to buy a new car, I scrapped it for a few $100 and put the word out that I was looking to buy a car in between $2,000 to $2,500. I was, and still do, work 2 jobs, so I very quickly tired of having bum rides to work. This fact led me to ignore a few red flags, but I'll get to that. One of my jobs is a corporate 9 to 5. The other is an upscale gentleman's club. I put the word out about needing a car to my co-workers at both places. A month went by, and I hadn't heard a thing, when a waitress at the club pulled me aside. She told me that one of her customers offered her a really good deal on a car, but her parents bought her a brand new Escape, so she didn't need it. He wanted $1,000 for an '06 Chevy with low mileage, and asked if I wanted to be introduced. It seemed like a godsend. I quickly agreed, and she led me over to the back of the bar, to a booth where a tall, broad-shouldered older man sat. He looked about 60 years old, but he was still pretty huge even sitting down. He looked like a retired army guy, with a small beer gut, but lots of old man muscle. "Mark, this is Carrie. Carrie, this is Mark." She introduced us, and I sat down next to him. He didn't look at me or acknowledge me, and I got the feeling he was very awkward. My co-worker excused herself and left us. I quickly explained that I was looking for a new car. He finally looked at me, and he began explaining the deal. It was his brother's wife's car. They lived one state over, about 4 hours. They initially bought the car for their daughter, brand new, but she had a baby a few years later and refused to drive it anymore because it was a 2-door and the baby's car seat didn't fit behind the seat. It had been sitting for years, but now the neighbor, who was a cop, was threatening them, saying that if they didn't put insurance in it, they had to get rid of it, or they'd be ticketed. So now, they were looking to unload it as quickly as possible. Hence the great deal. I was beyond excited. Mark and I chatted a little longer, albeit awkwardly, and eventually exchanged numbers. Before I went to work, the subject of art came up, and he mentioned he had always wanted to learn how to draw. I got excited, because at the time I was giving private drawing lessons to make extra money. He seemed interested, and after I showed him my portfolio on my phone, and he suggests maybe even knocking the price down a little in exchange for a few lessons, I wrap up our goodbyes and head back to work. He exits my work shortly after. I am ecstatic. At 3 a.m, I'm finally back in civilian clothes, waiting inside the front doors for my ride when Mark texts me. "Can you come to my house for the drawing lessons this week?" I politely tell him that I didn't feel comfortable with that, because he would have to pick me up and I'd be dependent on him to take me home. And he's a stranger. It just didn't feel right. "All the more reason for you to get this car. You deserve it," he replied. I agree, brushing off the second half of the sentence. He's probably just a little lonely and trying to be nice. We set a date and meet up in a public space, so I can check out the car. He plans on paying his niece to make the 4-hour drive the following Tuesday, 5 days from now. I agree. She doesn't mind, because her parents are going to let her keep whatever money I pay for it, and Mark will pay for her gas there and back, plus a tip. I forget about Mark for a day or two, until the texts start. All hours of the day, the most random questions, but all of them pertaining to the car and art deals. So I didn't think too much into it. He's never been married, and he claims he has Asperger's, which I found out later was a lie, and that he only has his brother, no one else. I figure he's doing me a favor, and I can answer a few harmless texts. But then, I miss a few at work, and he spams me, getting progressively angrier with each text. When I finally respond, I bitch him out, saying he has no right to my time or attention. He relents, saying he thought something bad had happened to me, that's all, and that he wasn't angry. He was scared. I think back to what he said about having Asperger's, and I think maybe I'm misunderstanding his texts, and I kind of feel bad. He stops for a few days, and then Tuesday rolls around. I bring my mum's boyfriend with me to the parking lot as I'm meeting him, and look for the car and his niece. It's beautiful. I love it. My mum's boyfriend says it's a great deal, and that I would be stupid not to take it. I tell Mark I want it, and he spent the whole interaction silent, seemingly intimidated by my mum's 5'1" boyfriend, which is hilarious. The niece drives the car back home. Because the title in his sister-in-law's name, I have to go to her house 4 hours away to have her sign the title over to me. Mark says he has a doctor's appointment at the hospital about 30 minutes from there, so I can ride down there with him and drive myself home. I agree to the seemingly convenient plan, and we set the date for next Wednesday. So, come Wednesday morning at 6 AM, my mum drops me to Mark's house. I assume his appointment is at 9 or 10, since he wants to leave very early. But he tells me it's at 1. I ask him why the hell he's leaving so early, if the hospital is only 3.5 hours away. He ignores my question, but I have my answer soon enough. This neurotic arsehat has to stop at every rest stop. Every single one. It takes us 6 hours to get to the hospital, almost making us late for his appointment. We park the car and I tell him to ask one of the concierge people where we're supposed to be, as it's a huge hospital. He then screams a racial slur. He's getting frantic, and I'm starting to see how he's a little unhinged. But I'm 3 hours from home and he's already got my $1,000. I can't back up now. I ask for directions to find the elevator to the floor we need to be on. It's the 8th floor. Mark won't get in. He says he can't do elevators. They'd kill him. Randomly, a mentally handicapped man in a wheelchair next to us repeats the words, "It will kill us." And Mark yells, "See? He knows!" I'm out of patience. I yank him into the elevator and we finally arrive at his appointment. Just on time. I quickly fall asleep in the lobby because he would not let me fall asleep in the car, knowing I'd worked till 3 AM the night before. I awaken to the sound of Mark screaming at the top of his lungs at the poor clerk behind the desk in the lobby. He's calling her every name in the book: skank, whore, slut, bitch, asshole, and so on. She looks completely terrified, as can be reasonably expected, and screams back that she is calling security. I hop up, grab him by the arm and drag him, literally running back to the elevator. He opens his mouth to protest, but I tell him to shut up and get in the elevator. I am in no mood for this. I refuse to be stranded across state lines because he had landed himself in the slammer for God knows what reason. We exit the elevator just as a team of security guards enter it and rush past them, trying to look normal. We finally get outside and I lose my shit and ask what the hell happened. He told me he was waiting for the doctor and he had to use the bathroom. He came to his room while he was gone, so he skipped him to go to the next patient, and he wouldn't be back for an hour. And I ask what the receptionist has to do with it. And he says that she was in on it, and that she could have told him that the doctor was an arsehole. I just stare at him in disbelief. I fully realize I am dealing with a mentally unstable individual, but I am locked into this deal and I'm 30 minutes from being able to drive away. So I just shake my head and walk back to the car silently. We finally get to the brother's house. The title is signed over to me. All is good, except that the port in the car to charge my phone doesn't work. And now, with my phone being dead, I don't know how to get home. I ask Mark if I can charge my phone in his car for a while, and he says yes. I start to follow him home. It's getting really late at this point, and I'm exhausted, and I beg him please skip a few rest stops. He skips 2, then pulls into a rest area. He hops out of his car with his childish grin, and he says, "You like what I did there? I skipped 2. Oh my Christ. I check my phone and it's on 50%. Good enough. I am done with this guy. I tell him goodbye and thanks, but I'm gonna take off now. And he seems confused. I ignore it and absolutely floor it home. Then the texts begin. "Zoom zoom, little girl. Let's see if you find the secret of the wire. You won't make it far, little girl. Zoom." There she goes. I'm creeped the hell out, but I ignore it as soon as the SOS is open. I have registration and insurance on the car. The texts start to get worse. "Tell your pimp you messed up, little girl, and I have all the money. Don't ignore me. You think the car is safe? Ha, silly little girl. You're just a whore junkie. Wait till I go to the cops. You stole that car, and you owe me $2,000. I'm talking to your pimp now, because you're too stupid to come up with that kind of cash. Bring it to me on Monday, or I'm going to the cops and bust your little sex trafficking ring." Variations on this, all day. I block his number. I call Mark's brother just in case, and tell him what's happening. He couldn't care less. He says to pay him, and I say I did. He says, "Do I have proof?" And I say yes. He gave you the money. Why would your wife sign over the title without getting paid? He asks me if Mark knows where I live. I say no, and he just says, "Good." I start to get texts from a new number, this time claiming to be the cops. I know it's Mark, and I threaten to get a PPO if he doesn't stop. He goes ballistic. He tells me he knows where I live, where my kids go to school, and where I get my drugs. And I know he's lying, because I don't have kids, a pimp, or a drug problem, and I'm not a prostitute. I'm scared shitless, and all I can do is block this number too. I'm always looking over my shoulder leaving work. I sleep with a baseball bat. He attempts to get me fired from my job, but he's laughed out and banned. Months go by, and I start to relax. I can still see if he texts me, even though he's blocked. It just goes to a different folder. I check it once in a while, and for a few months, he sends me completely normal texts, followed by psycho shit when I don't respond. "I know you love me, and that's why you're doing this. Because your dad is dead, and so you don't know how to love. It hurts me. Let me buy your kids some toys." It jumps from that to, "You whore, zoom zoom. Do you like to ruin men's lives? Stop listening to your meth head brother." Again, I have no kids. I realize he's trying to scare me, and legally, the car is mine. He can't take it from me. I finally relax a little. Then, I happen to be awake one day when the mail lady comes. She knocks and tells me I have to sign for something. She hands me a manila envelope with the name Mark Smith as the return address, my full name on it, and the back is stamped with notify sender stamps, like 100 of them, and erratically placed. My heart stops. He knows where I live. And as much as I'm dying to know what the letter says, I don't sign for it and tell her to return it to sender and explain the situation. Now I realize he probably just looked up my name online and he found 5 different addresses, then sent certified mail to all of them in my name in an attempt to verify at which one I lived. I thwarted his plan by not signing. Screw him. Fast forward 2 months. I am home alone and get a call from a number that I don't know. But it's local, so I picked up. "Hi, this is Officer Sanford with the City Fraud Division. Is this Carrie?" "Oh shit. Yeah, that's me. I believe we have a mutual friend here? My heart sinks. I know he means Mark. Am I screwed? Oh, don't worry, girl, I'm on your side. I think this guy is off his rocker. I've been looking into this for a while, and this just doesn't add up to you being guilty of anything but buying a car. Justice. Turns out, Mark walked into a police station to report the car that he never owned, that I had the title to. He reported it stolen, and to report my prostitution ring. He was laughed out, so he wrote letters, lots of them, to the government, to the president, to the sheriff. So a city fraud investigator got involved. He spoke to the sister-in-law and verified she signed the title over, verified I had registration and insurance, looked into my squeaky clean record, and even looked into my schooling and saw very prestigious university. And he spoke to Mark face to face. And he knew Mark was absolutely mental. So he had me write a brief account of my side of the story and advised me to get a restraining order, and told Mark to stay away from me. Me, as well as the brother and sister-in-law actually, and close the case. If Mark ever tries to mess with me again, I've got Officer Sanford's number on speed dial. I am just so relieved that the stalking came to an end. For now, anyway. I am a 20-year-old male living in the Deep South. I am now a functional, medicated, and therapy-attending paranoid schizophrenic. However, I wasn't always this way, and this story comes from a time before I even knew what was wrong. It was around April 2017. I had just come out of a painful divorce, and she had taken all of my friends away from me in the process. I was obviously trying to reach out to anyone I could, but I had severe codependency issues that I didn't know how to address. Anyway, I found myself wandering the games section of my local Walmart, as I still am a gamer at heart, and had to see what was available. Things were going alright, and I seemed to be in control of myself. Then he appeared. This poor, unsuspecting soul started talking to me about the World of Warcraft, which I happened to play. I perked up at this point, thinking I could make a friend, a new friend, that had not been taken away from me. We made casual jokes and talked about the new expansion. At this point, his mother, as he was probably 18 to 20 judging by his appearance, came and took him to another aisle. He didn't say goodbye, he just walked off, and like that, our conversation was through. Well, in my mind, we had made a connection. We had bonded. In my sick, twisted state, I thought he would appreciate it if we hung out for a while. So I followed him. I made a point to casually stroll down the aisles that he happened to visit, and striked up a conversation with him about different things, jokes and such. I can't remember. I could tell he was getting creeped out by the third time I did this. He started getting this deer in headlights look every time he saw me, and it was starting to become a horror story, though in my eyes, it was perfectly normal. At some point, his fight or flight must have kicked in, because when I appeared, as soon as I opened my mouth to speak, he screamed, "Leave me alone!" and stormed off, dragging his mother as quickly as he possibly could. This was a wake-up call for me, that I was being severely creepy, and also a stalker. I realized that this could very well be the behavior that caused my divorce in the first place. I checked myself in to a mental institution after that, and got the help I needed. I am now significantly better, and my relationships with people have greatly improved. I now have good friends, and a loving fiancé. Not all creepers mean to be creepy. Some of us just need the proper psychiatric help. On behalf of all the unknowing and good-intended creepers out there, I humbly and sincerely apologize for our behavior. It doesn't make it forgivable, but I hope it does give you some context as to what goes on in the mind of a creeper. Thank you for your time. I was driving home when I realized a truck had been behind me for miles. Just to be precautious, I made an abrupt, last-second U-turn. He did too. It was there that I realized he was following me. While on the phone with 911, I made sharp turns and ran red lights to try and lose him. He wouldn't stop, literally almost hitting my car a couple of times as he sped up trying to catch me. The 911 operator instructed me to go to a local grocery store and wait for police. I parked right in front of the store entrance where the surveillance cameras were and waited. He decided to park his car at a distance and waited for me to leave my vehicle. All of a sudden, I heard a knock at the window. I freaked out, and it turned out to be the grocery store manager letting me know 911 had notified him of the situation. He asked if I wanted to go inside the store, and he would protect me until the cops arrived. I honestly feared for the worst and said no. I was shaking, but I thought this maniac might have a gun, and he could shoot me and everyone in there. The cops arrived and luckily cornered him in the back of the parking lot. I was shaking as they came to my car. My hands gripped the wheel very tightly, and they arrested him soon after for a third DUI, and police filed a report. I didn't know who he was. Apparently, he only lived a couple of miles away from me. The real thrill to this story, though. 2 months later, I receive a letter to notify me that I may be subpoenaed. I called the DMV who issued the letter, and they notify me that not only is he free again, but that my information, including my address, were on the police report that was provided to him and his attorney. Thanks, LAPD. I now live in fear that any day he is gonna come and hurt me in his revenge or to carry on his stalking, and I have no idea what to do.
Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. Make sure you go over to Mortis Media's channel now and subscribe as well. Till we meet again, stay sinful.